A few words were all it took to get me addicted. I had struggled for months hearing, "Come on, just try it," or "How do you know you won't like it if you've never tried it?" Enough times is all it took. I was a victim of peer pressure, just like all the other kids in my high school. Yes, because being in the upper class and going to one of the most prestigious private Catholic high schools in San Juan, Puerto Rico, didn't mean we were all about to join a convent. In fact, most of us were mostly atheists by the time we were in the 10th grade and didn't go to church except for those Wednesdays when we were forced to sit there for 2 or 3 hours pretending to listen to the priest. And I'm pretty sure the Catholic Church would not have approved of my newfound hobby. But I didn't care. I couldn't stop. And even if I wanted to, I didn't know how. I got my fix every day after school, before I ate, before I did my homework, before anything. And it's all I thought about all day. But I was able to keep it hidden. I don't think anybody besides my close friends ever knew. I was a little ashamed to tell the truth. I didn't want people to judge me, and I know most people would not understand. I mean, seriously, what would people say if they found out I was addicted to fan fictions? If they knew that I spent my free time on the internet reading stories about Harry Potter, not written by J.K. Rowling, but by normal people. I thought the only people who got obsessed with fanfictions were nerds who stayed at home on weekends and played Dungeons and Dragons. I did not want to be put into that same category. I was already kind of a dork anyway, especially compared to all the racy kids from my school who started drinking when they were 12. And I had never had an alcoholic beverage in my life and barely went out unless it was to the movies. I was one of those who said she was never going to drink. Of course, that changed when I went to college. However, this is one of the reasons I was so opposed to it in the beginning. Even though I was proud of my nerdy status, I did not want to go any lower in the popularity scale. I was comfortable where I was, and I liked being friends with the smartest kids in my class. But two of my best friends were obsessed with fanfictions and were not afraid to show it. And it wasn't just Harry Potter, but all kinds of anime fanfictions too. That was just on a whole other level for me. They would spend entire recess periods discussing them, and I tried my hardest to block them out. They were driving me crazy, especially since they kept insisting that I start reading them. I'm so stubborn that the more they insisted, the more I resisted. They kept saying I should read some, that I would love them. I was convinced I would never get involved in that nonsense. I finally caved in when my friend sent me one chapter of a fan fiction she thought I would like. "Just read it. If you like it, keep reading. If you don't, then I'll leave you alone," she told me. So just to get her off my back, I read it. I thought there was no way I was ever going to be into that. But just like my friend had predicted, I was hooked. But how couldn't I be? I'm a big Harry Potter fan. Not big enough to dress up for movie premieres or book releases, but big enough to read each book in less than 3 days and read most of them 2 or even 3 times. And at the time, I was actually anxiously waiting for the release of the seventh book in the series. After the sixth book, I had been left in a limbo where Professor Dumbledore was dead. Harry had broken up with Ginny, and he who must not be named was on the verge of getting all his power back. I was dying to know what was going to happen next, and I have never been very patient. So she caught me at a very vulnerable time to introduce me to this whole new world where I had all the stories I could ever want to read available whenever I wanted. No more waiting months to get a chance to fly back into the world of witchcraft and wizardry. I had it on the screen right in front of me, and it was free. In just one website, there were thousands of stories about anything Harry Potter related I could ever imagine. When I logged in using my pen name, I was greeted with a whole database organized by books, movies, TV shows, etc. Within those, there were different categories such as characters or pairs of characters, and genres such as action, romance, comedy. I didn't pay attention to anything that wasn't Harry Potter related because I just wanted to escape from the muggle world for a while and go somewhere where I wasn't bombarded with algebra, biology, or religion class homework. I wanted to read about other teenagers' drama, which was way more interesting with magic and love potions involved. After that first hit, I was addicted. I started reading the story my friend sent me, but after a few days, that just wasn't enough. So I began to explore the world of fanfictions.com for myself. I even subscribed to more than one fanfiction website and spent hours browsing and reading stories. But what can I say? I was addicted. There were so many possibilities. Some fanfictions were about what would happen next in the story. Others changed things that had already happened to the way the authors would have preferred it. Some were really far-fetched stories that went against everything in the books. They didn't follow the plot at all. Like this really cheesy one I read about Harry, Ron, Ginny, and Hermione spending the summer at Hermione's home living like muggles. But as cheesy as it had me hooked. Others, however, seemed so real that I still get them confused with what actually happened in the books. I would spend hours in front of my computer reading and forgetting about everything else that was happening around me. But after a while, even reading just wasn't enough anymore. It was still fun, but I needed to experiment some more. I decided to write my own story to see if that would give me that feeling of satisfaction I got in the beginning. By writing fanfictions, people got their own say in what happened in the story, and I was so amazed by this that I wanted to try it for myself. All of those thousands of people who wrote their stories I was so obsessed with reading could publish their ideas. Why couldn't I? I thought I could be just as good as them. Writing had been one of my dreams for a long time, even if I had never told anybody. I barely wrote for fun since I never thought it would be possible for me to have something published or for people to be interested in anything I had to say. I mostly wrote essays for school, and while I pretended to hate them, just like everybody else, I was always excited to write them, especially since I got A's on all of them. But in high school, admitting to like writing essays is just committing social suicide. Even though I was still a little scared to put myself out there since I've always been shy, I decided to suck it up and start writing my own story about what I thought would happen after the sixth book between Harry and Ginny. I was a Harry Ginny fan from the beginning, so I was heartbroken when Harry broke up with her at the end of the sixth book. But I finally got a chance to do something about it. I wrote my story from Harry's point of view as he left his aunt and uncle's house to visit the Weasleys over the summer and get the love of his life back. The good thing about fan fictions was that no one knew who I was. My identity was hidden by the pen name that I chose. I could write freely without being scared of people judging or criticizing me. I also got to escape to the magical world which now I was creating. This just brought me that new high that I had been looking for. I also felt good about myself because my story got really good comments and feedback. In fanfiction websites, you can get comments from pretty much anybody who has an account and has access to your story. Comments are usually whether people like the story or not, and what they did and did not like about it. When they did like it, they would urge you to come up with a new chapter as soon as possible. I think this has been all I wanted from the beginning, just to know that I was good enough to write something that people would like, because I never finished this story or another one that I was writing with my friend. Shortly after publishing the first chapters, I lost all interest in fan fictions. I guess fan fictions were good for me, even though I had always been ashamed of this brief period in my teenage years. They really boosted my confidence, which is something that every teenage girl needs. They also opened a lot of doors for me. That was the first time I saw myself as a writer. After this, I began to write for both the Spanish and English language newspapers in my high school. I also discovered that the internet was not just for doing homework and talking to my friends through MSN Messenger.